about it.
All right, so I have the great honor to be speaking with Nora Schleich. Did I say it properly?
Perfect.
Who is a doctoral, well, has her PhD in German Idealism, has been working on Kant, analytics of the Sublime, theory of imagination and judgment, also interested in epistemology, philosophical aesthetics, criticism, German classicism. I think you also work on Schopenhauer as well too.
Yes. I was working on Schopenhauer, and I'm reading and working on him in a more personal way, because I think he bears great insights to life's mysteries as well.
Nora is also a member of the German Kant Society and a member of the Schopenhauer Society and a member of the Kant Research Project on the Critique and Contemporary Kantian Philosophy Project, and currently speaks on issues in culture and society in Luxembourg, right? Am I right?
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Normally my videos have been on Schelling, but I'm giving Schelling a little break for right now. So I had one of my friends on speak about Hegel, and honestly, I love Kant, so I've decided to bring you on because I know how much you love Kant and I've read a lot of your writings and I think they're absolutely amazing. So I thought you could bring us through and kind of introduce us who Kant is, his project, the era that he lived in. Yeah. No big question or anything.
No, nothing. No pressure on me.
No pressure at all. No.
Well, let's be straightforward. I think no real German idealism without Kant. I think is the ground of all the reflections that have been going on after his period. He was born in 1724, so soon is his 300th birthday, which will be celebrated with a big colloquium in Germany, in Bonn. And his philosophy was the base for guys like Schopenhauer, Fichte, Hegel, and also Schelling to develop more on the idea that how we see the world is directly linked to how we construct the world mentally. Kant, his main aim was to show that we can't know anything that is lying beyond our forms of sensual cognition. So we need always to look at things through space and time. Otherwise, we can never know anything else, because it's our glasses, not these glasses. I can't take them off. But these forms of experiences, how we call them, are the basics for our perceiving. So metaphysical things like God or freedom or the immortality of the soul, these are nice concepts to reflect on, but really knowing the absolute of this, we can't. And this is something that was really new, because guys like Descartes and so on, they were sure that God, the instance, gave us the insight in these concepts, or in Middle Age philosophy, we as beings created by God were, and then I point to Leibniz, are directly linked to this supersensible being and taking part of all this whole. And Kant said, well, we don't know. We can't know it. We can think on it. We can reflect on it. And we maybe need even this idea that there is a bigger creator. But what we know is the phenomenal world. The nominal world, the metaphysical one, we don't know. But Hegel, of course, said, oh, Kant, you just did not have the guts to fulfill it. Our reason is the powerful, our Geist is the powerful actor that is constructing all of it. And Fichte, of course, is also a bit more fast forward. But Kant, he was a bit more humble. He was a bit more down to earth. And he tried to spell out rigorously and in many, many details how we conceive the world and how we think about the world. And shows us that we can never access the bigger ideas and never know them. We can just reflect on them. That was his aim. And the well-known critique of purism is dealing with that. And the other critiques are dealing then more with practical philosophy, but it's all a bit in the same color, I would say. So we can have moral ideas, but but we can't get knowledge on this in an epistemological way. And the third critique that I was working on is dealing with the shift between theoretical knowledge and practical need for abstract ideas like the good, the highest good. And the third critique asked, and how is it possible that in one human being, in the sensual and rational being, there is these two sides, theory and practice combined? And that's the third critique, talking about that.
Well, thank you for that. This is gonna, hopefully this doesn't put you on the spot, but how do you think, like recently I've noticed that some Kantians are being a little leery about putting Kant in German idealism. They consider him a part of this Enlightenment movement, and they're like, no, he's not a part of German idealism. What do you think about that? Is that an interesting move? Is it not interesting? Because I know you just said that you consider him the kind of ground of German idealism. I agree with you, by the way.
And he was, of course, also an important figure in Enlightenment, but the research he did and the findings he had, they are not called without reason transcendental idealism. So I think that we can actually put him in the idealist line. And I would say maybe he is maybe the pioneer of idealism, not the full-fledged idealist like Hegel, but still, he shows how we construct our appearances, how we construct our understanding, and that's the early steps of idealism. For me.
No, that's great. That's great. So out of the three critiques, I see the critique of judgment as being a little bit different. It seems like its own oddity. What would you say led you to this text? What was so interesting about the actual text? Because I know you work on this text.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my bachelor's and master's, we worked on many other writings of Kant. And the third critique I was only having some seminars on it in aesthetics course. But somehow I got really interested in his theory that we need a special kind of freedom to feel the beauty, to feel the aesthetic experience of the beautiful. And so I started digging into that because that was something that hit me, and now I see a bit how my past explains my path to the third critique. I was always interested in arts, and I have some special artworks or some special aesthetic moments that really flash me, but I can also go through a museum and I don't care about anything because it's nothing there. So I always ask myself, what is it in the special artwork or in a natural experience that is really hitting you? So in fact, Kant's third critique, the first part of the third critique, the first book of the third critique is dealing with that question that is interesting me already since a long time. And then I wrote my master's thesis already on the important role of the aesthetic moment in Kant's philosophy. And my doctoral thesis was then very specific on why the Sublime moment is actually the moment that is really touching the subject as a whole and is so attractive for us.
Okay, so now thank you for that. Now I'm gonna ask you two difficult questions, if you don't mind. What is judgment according to Kant? And can you sort of lead us into what Kantian aesthetics is?
When you say what is judgment, and here's the problem that I'm German speaking, do you mean Urteilskraft, the faculty of judgment, or do you mean Urteil, judgment?
Very good. Maybe you can differentiate between the two of them for us.
Where to begin? According to Kant, I excuse my English vocabulary. Maybe I get some things not precisely as Gaia would spell it out, but I'm working on Kant mainly in German, so.
No. It's perfect. Don't even worry, please.
I just check in because I have the third critique, of course, with me in German. According to Kant, the faculty of judgment is one of the upper faculties of the, I don't find it now, so I do improvisation, is one of the upper faculties of the human. We have the understanding, we have reason, and we have the faculty of judgment. Why do we need that? Well, in epistemology, where we want to get to know, when we want to get a cognition, we need a faculty that is combining both the sensual appearance and the concept of the understanding into one to make it a cognition. And there we have the faculty of judgment, who is preparing the judgment, Urteil, by estimating if the formal sensual appearance and its content, the material quality, is fitting into the concept of the understanding by X, Y, Z different criteria. And if there's fitting, we have a cognition. So faculty of judgment is responsible to see if it fits and then forms a cognitive judgment. That's determining judgment, because we have a determined concept, and it's a concrete cognition. We also have reflective faculty of judgment, and this is very special, and I think it's a brilliant and really beautiful finding of Kant to introduce that. When we have a sensual appearance, but where we have no concrete concept to apply on, as it is the case when we experience something aesthetical, which is spellbinding us. Like, imagine you are sitting in front of your window and you're just listening to the wind going through the leaves of the trees. You don't think about, okay, how many kilometers per hour is the wind now, or what tree is it that is now hit by the wind, but you just listen to it and you don't think at all. So then you have a perception, but no concept on it, because understanding is not active in that way. And then it's the faculty of reflective judgment who needs to do something with it, because we humans function like that. We need to have always a sensual appearance and something else, a form, to make it understandable. So reflective judgment then tries to find this harmony, as it does in cognition, that is something fitting. It has no concept, so it creates something on its own to find a certain harmony, and thus an aesthetic experience. We experience then the beautiful and form the judgment, Urteil, schön. So we have two kinds of faculty of judgments, determining and reflecting, and therefore we also have two kinds of judgments, Urteile, bestimmt, determined, and reflektierend, reflexiv, reflecting. That was the first question. Was it? Did I miss something?
No, you did. You nailed it perfectly. That was awesome. Actually, you went in great detail, and yeah, we're getting to the stuff that I love the most. Actually, in a second.
It's really beautiful. Your second question was, if I'm correct, what is aesthetics in Kant?
Yes. What are Kantian aesthetics? Yes.
There we have to be a bit careful, because we, in the first critique that deals with the conditions of epistemic knowledge, there's also a part called aesthetics. And when we go back to the Greek aiesthesis, which means a sensual perception, it gets clear. Kant there investigates on which forms of sensibility we have in order to grasp sensible content outside. So these are aesthetics for cognition, and space and time are the forms of appearance that are for us the basics for aesthetic experience in the determined way, cognitive way. Then we have Kantian aesthetics from the third critique, reflective aesthetics, pure aesthetics. And that is the very tricky realm between theoretical cognition, practical reflection, determinability, will. So it's a kind of oscillating moment. It's the experiencing of music, of a beautiful sunset, of the Sublime mountains. All these moments where we don't get concrete, but we are put somehow in a special feeling is what Kant calls then the reflective aesthetics, which are the aesthetic of the third critique.
Great. So maybe my next question is what, because you brought up this idea of the sublime feeling. What is the sublime for Kant? And is it close to what Kant considers the beautiful? And how are the beautiful and the sublime different?
Okay, the sublime in Kant. You don't know how many people ask me in my not academic field, ask me, what is the sublime? And I always go with the same moment, because with the same explanation of the moment, because that's what hits me even now. I was now in vacation in the Alps and I had a sublime experience. So imagine you go on a wandering and you really climb on the mountain and you are on top and you see the panorama of the mountains, of these walls of mountains. You don't have to go to Mount Everest, go into Switzerland. It's enough you see these huge walls of just mountain, and you feel a kind of majesticity, and it nearly takes your breath. You're standing there as a small person, but still you feel a kind of power and energy that is just overcoming you. And that's a sublime moment in Kant. He gives these examples. He talks also about violent thunderstorms that are really loud, and you see the lightnings, or abysses, not Nietzsche abysses, but normal abysses, where you gaze into that real deep hole and you see no end, you see endless hole. These moments are for Kant sublime moments. And this is really something that I can experience even without knowing what Kantian sublime is, because when I tell this experience to other people, when I share this impression, they know, yeah, I know what you mean. So there must be something really globally known as this experience when you face it. But as Kant says, you need to be in security when you are nearly falling down the abyss, or when you are maybe hit by the lightning and you're frightened and you feel your life is threatened. You don't have an aesthetic experience, you have an existential crisis then. But when you are inside and you see there the woods, which are really dark with the clouds or whatever, or you're in Switzerland on your trip, you are in security, and then you have time to get rid of everything else and just feel it. And this is an important notion, get rid of anything else. I mean, you get rid of the idea that you need to have cognition, you get rid of some personal interest, that you want something, you have no interest in the object at all, you don't need to do something, you're just in the moment, you're going with the flow, to say it now modernly, and you just feel what's going on, and you're somehow dipped into the moment, you're experiencing a real moment. It's not just mentally, you're into it. So you're somehow touched sensibly because you feel it, and you have an appearance that is sensibly grounded, but you do something with it, reflective judgment. You do something with it in your mind that is helping you to be in that aesthetic moment. And that's the same for the beautiful and the sublime. And that's why, which is an important point to me, the sublime is really to be seen as a pure aesthetic moment. There is nothing else. There is no other faculty, no understanding, and no reason middling in it. So that's the same for the sublime and the beautiful. The beautiful has a different structure than the sublime. Imagine, sitting next to a nice field of red flowers, and you just contemplate the flower. It's beautiful. You see many different red flowers in that field. You get a certain structure, and you have the feeling of wholeness, of I can assemble what I see without being conscious of that. I don't do an effort. I just assemble what I see. It has a nice form. It's in harmony. It looks like a whole. Then I experience the beautiful. I have a nice harmonious form, a unity of the manifold red dots that I see, or a unity of the many different aspects of the flower, and it does something with me. It makes me feel harmonious. It makes me feel free in a very neat and cozy way, and that's the experience of the beautiful. The sublime is a bit more punk rock, because first you are really yeah, you're like frightened, the really big mountain. And me, I'm like 1 meter 85. I'm so tiny next to that mountain, who is, yeah, it could kill me, it would fall on me. Or the abyss is so huge, I would die if I would fall into it. I'm just a tiny little human, and nature's vastness is overcoming me. So I have this first moment of frightening, or like Ehrfurcht in German, or like, I don't know how to say it. You're like, how do you say Ehrfurcht in English?
Ehrfurcht. Overwhelmed, maybe?
Yeah, or somehow something that, you're like, yeah, you're overwhelmed, and you are not daring to touch. But then somehow something happens, because you feel the majesticity, you feel something super sensible, you have this kind of feeling of elevation. And what is it? So the sublime is born out of a twofold moment: the frightening moment where you feel like tiny, and the moment you elevate, you get big and powerful, and you feel the might. So that's the difference between sublime and beautiful.
When you were talking, I had the image of Caspar David Friedrich's painting, the man on the rock, with the kind of tidal wave, flowing up, and him trying to grasp this moment.
Yes, it's really all about the moment. You have to experience it, and that's why it's subjective. Although it is, as Kant says, because I'm not guided by personal interests or something else, it has also a kind of universal communicability. It has a kind of objectivity, because there's nothing personal. It's just one moment everybody can access when he is in exactly the same moment, without being guided by personal interest or something individual, but just being there. So it's subjective because I have to live it, I have to feel it, I have to be there in that moment. But it's so objective because nothing personal guides me, that it's really a special thing in Kant, that it's universal.
So what about a piece of art, an artwork that moves us, or music? How would Kant respond to, I'm trying to think. I know Schelling and Hölderlin and Hegel loved Beethoven, but I don't know, I don't know if Kant was into music. I know he had regulative principles for dinner parties and stuff like that. I don't know if he listened to music. But how does the beautiful or the sublime relate to like a piece of artwork or music?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I gave a conference on it some moments ago, because it's tricky. A pure aesthetic moment, a pure aesthetic experience is only possible if there is no human intention behind it. The problem with the artwork is that it had been created by an artist wanting to create something. So are artworks pure and aesthetic? Difficult, because there is this finitude of the artist in it. Kant calls it a purposiveness. There is a purpose of the artist lying in artwork. So when we get that, it's not a real purposiveness as we need it to be for being purely aesthetic. I don't go into that, it's quite complicated. So with beautiful artworks, it's difficult. I think it's possible, because you could just look at it and not think at all that it is something created by a human being in order to create art. But Kant, I think he would rather deny that. It's not a pure experience. Pure aesthetic forms are only found in nature, as in flowers or structures. And then Kant, living in 18th century, when you think about art then, it was all really pictorial. The bigger oil paintings, the heavy stuff, much things on one artwork. So there was nothing like we know from the avant-garde, with just one black square from Malevich or Mark Rothko or Barnett Newman. There was no such thing. It was all heavily loaded. And when you see, I don't have my book now here, it's lying over there. When you see the cover there, it's like you know, it's a picture of mountains, of rocky mountains with many clouds. And Kant said, in an artwork like this, we don't find the sublime. It's just a desperate try to picture what is sublime. As soon as you try to put this pure aesthetic vast experience into one picture, you kill the vastness, you make it final, and that's not what it's about. If you, and that's what I was giving the conference on, and look at artworks from Barnett Newman, who said in one of his writings, the sublime is now. It gets a bit different. Well, the intention of the artist still is there. That's an issue we need to talk about. But you have this huge artwork with just one color and maybe one stripe. And you're standing there, you are overwhelmed. And Barnett Newman just wants to experience that there is something happening. He does not know you, he does not want to experience you what is happening, but he wants to make it present that there is something happening in present. So in fact, Barnett Newman intends to make this one moment happening when you feel something and you start to get conscious that there is something you feel. That's what, in fact, could link the art of avant-garde to Kantian Sublime. But in Kant's time, it was impossible to have a picture of the sublime. He even makes the analogy, and then I keep it short, that in religion, the sublime moment is that you are not allowed to picturize your gods. And he mentions the Jewish people who are prohibiting. I was right. Yeah. And that's just, you cannot put something super sensible into concrete forms or colors or straight or lines or whatever. Yeah.
No, you've been doing great. So partly why I wanted to discuss this text with you is because it inspires so many people. Hölderlin, Schelling, it inspires Schelling's mature philosophy in a sense, the critique of judgment. So my question is, what is nature to Kant? And does nature have its own kind of, I think the German word is etwas. I think I could be wrong. Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm. Or maybe a thatness, like a das. Because I think it's been a while, but I think he kind of ascribes, like we can reflectively think that maybe nature has its own teleology. I could be wrong about this, but is there something dynamic happening in nature? Because I know he read Blumenbach. I don't think he ascribes some trieb or drive to it, but I think he does kind of ascribe some element of teleology, or I could be wrong, but
when we need to be careful here. When we say that he ascribes the kind of theology to nature, he says that it is us putting the idea of a teleology into nature, into how we perceive nature. And just not to confuse people now, because we were talking about beauty and the sublime.
Right.
Which the first part of the book, introducing with how reflective judgment works. Then he comes over to the teleological reflective judgment, who is then dealing with the question that how is it possible that we seem to see a certain ordnung, ordnung?
Function?
No, wait, I just Google it quickly because that's important. I'm sorry.
No.
That's why we have Google, right? Order, I'm so stupid. It's order. Oh God.
Yes,
sorry.
Order. That's okay.
So we seem to think that nature has a specific order. The rivers are there to provide us with water. The trees are there to provide us with apple or with shadow. But why? Why do we think that nature is made in such a way, or nature is serving us in such a way that it is especially made in that way that it serves us? It's not a really humble idea, right? So how can that be? And this is, I think, directly linked to Kant's idea that how we cognize nature is depending on our forms of sensibility. I see the trees being green. but maybe it is not even green, it's purple and it's shaped in triangle. But my forms make me believe that this is how we can experience nature. So, and somehow Kant extrapolates this idea, I think, into the theological judgment part of the book, that we need to think that nature has a certain order because we need an idea that helps us to make the manifoldness of natural experiences and natural things we perceive somehow graspable. But never forget, the concept of order is a concept we brought up. It's not a concept that is in nature. Dynamics is not a concept that is in nature. We are creating this layer and put it onto nature in order to make it understandable for us. If nature has a certain adverse, if it has a certain, I don't know, nature-like thing that is only like this for nature, nature in itself, the thing in itself, we can never know. We can speculate, of course, but we can't know it.
Interesting. Very interesting.
But of course, Kant is talking about natural dynamics and forms and everything else and how it interacts, because he is investigating on it. But the most important thing of teleology, sorry.
No, it's fine.
I always get it wrong, always. In nature is that it's a concept that is helping us to get to a judgment, to a reflective judgment, to understand it.
All right. And what was it that brought you to Kant? What was it that struck you about Kant's philosophy, especially the aesthetics? How did you get there?
Well, I had Kant in high school, but only 1 year and only a few hours. And I thought, what the fuck is this? How can you understand this? That's impossible, right? Subjective, objective, form, space, time, thing in itself. What the fuck? And that really struck me. And I thought, I want to understand what this man writes. And then I was so taken by his writings already in early years of bachelor that I could not get enough. And I dug deeper and deeper, and it was, of course, hard sometimes, categories, transcendental deduction, what, but the more you are into it, and I think you know what I mean, it gets more fun. You get the insights, you understand this comes from there and then from there, and it gets your own word. And in aesthetics, the third critique, I think the Kantian thoughts on, well, I must be careful, the Kantian thoughts on our apparatus is just, on our faculties, is just combined, it's just synthesized and made more explicit. And that's why I think in the first moment aesthetics was interesting for me. And of course, because the notion of freedom is more important in these texts.
Can I ask you what Kantian freedom is then? Or is that going right off the rails? It's fine.
I can try to make it short. Freedom is, you can't explain Kantian freedom in one word or in one sentence, because there are, of course, different perspectives on freedom. You have the regulative idea of freedom, that we must conceive ourselves as possibly accessing freedom, because otherwise we would not believe in something like a free will, which according to Kant we definitely have. So moral actions independent of our sensual drives would be impossible, and that's not working. So we need that idea that freedom is actually mentally possible for us, and which helps us to act according to the moral good. We are free from our thrives, from egoism or for whatever. So we can act freely, we devote ourselves freely to the duty to act according to the moral law. Freedom is also there in aesthetics, and that's where it's so
great,
appealing for me, is that you have, when you experience this sublime moment, you are just not thinking about anything else and not feeling anything else. You're just into that very moment. And Schopenhauer says in music, because I forgot to talk about music before when you asked me, it's in music that you can actually get that real feeling of not being driven by the will. In Schopenhauer, it's something more aggressive than Kant, of course. You are accessing in these moments a kind of freedom that is just allowing you to connect with who you actually are, to connect with your real being as, and Kant would put it, a sensual, rational being touched, both faculties touched in a similar harmonious way. And that's a kind of aesthetic freedom, an oscillation between the determined and the supersensible world. And I find that beautiful. I could think about that the whole day.
That's awesome. That's really interesting. I never took philosophy in high school. So, and after I left and I hated all school back then. I did not like academics. I didn't like anything. And so after taking a year off from school, I went to a college, like a community college. And there was a retired Kantian there that I never knew anything about. And we were just taking this intro to humanities course. And he came in and he opens up the lecture with sapere aude, dare to know. Have the courage to use your own reason. And that blew me away. I went, what do you mean dare to know? What does that even mean? And I sat there after the lecture had happened, an hour after the lecture. So everyone left and I'm sitting there going, what does that even mean? Who asked a question like that? What are you talking about? And then I went back and I reread it and I was going, oh no. And then I finally I was reading What is Enlightenment? And I realized, oh, I know exactly what this is about. And that was it. I was converted. I was all about philosophy from that moment onward.
Yeah, this text blew my mind too. It was one of the first texts I read. And it's so actual. That still is striking me. He's like, and when he says you don't need a book telling you what to do, we could say now you don't need an app telling you when to water your flowers or what to grow in your garden or what to do. Just there again to ask yourself what is the best thing to do. And this text is in fact also my underlying thrive to do philosophy and to share philosophy, because we all can use our own understanding. We all can find our own potential and build it up. I was never really passionate in school at either. I was good in school, but nothing special, and I was not interested. But then when I noticed that I can access my potential and I can do something with it, and then we are already a bit more talking Fichte stuff because he's also working on that a lot. It was super interesting, and then I got like catalyst. I can know, I can understand, I can think, I can write, I can formulate, and this was really like it. That is it. I think that's really the reason why we humans are here: discover our own potential and make something out of it without relying on who the fuck is telling you what to do. And I want to share this idea because many people are living below their own capacities. Oh, I can't read that. I don't understand that. You don't need to understand Fichte's Wissenschaftslehre, but you need to know that you could understand it if you're working on yourself. So you don't need to read that, but you can access a bit more difficult texts and thoughts. It will help you discover your own capacity, your supersensible capacity. Huh? We are more than potatoes, just vegetating there. But we can do something. And this, already talking this really makes me feel again like, bam, yes, we can do our own projects. We can find out the jobs we want. We just need to do it. And I think having a population with that spirit is something different than what we experience now, where we are, which is my impression, are all held a bit around under the threshold with distraction and I say divertissement, the fun community. You have entertainment all the time. You don't need entertainment all the time. You have yourself. You have all you need with yourself, and you can make something out of that. But it's much more interesting than a whole evening on Netflix or whatever, And I think that would be great if just by sharing philosophy or your philosophical passion, you could just show one or two human beings that it's actually possible for them, and yeah, without being lecturing, but just showing it's possible.
Yes. So I'm not. So I'm not finished my dissertation, but ITA, right? And so every time when I'm a teacher's assistant and I have students, and they always ask me, how can you do all this reading? How can you do all this reading? I always tell them, do you know what reading is? Reading is having a discussion with someone. I'm having a discussion with the text. I'm talking to somebody else. I'm going through it. And there's something about Kant that always grabs me, okay? I think actually more that, well, with Schelling, it's more, I get blown away by the writing, the poetic writing. I love his system. But with Kant, it's different. Kant has this like architectonic, he has this structure that takes you in, that interwoves you with the text. And you get blown away by the system. You get blown away by the definitions. The definitions work your way up to the actual concepts. Concepts work its way up to the functions of the faculties. And then finally you get to, you figure out what you get to do with this. And that's the best thing about it. It's kind of like a detective novel where you're looking for the problem and the question, and you're trying to solve this, and you're getting bit by bit by bit by bit as it's unfolding. So this is something, so every time I open a Kantian book, I'm always a Kantian. Like it just absorbs me. I'm done. Like that's it. Like Schelling who? It like I'm totally absorbed by it. But yeah. I wanted to ask you what you're currently working on right now. I'm interested to see, because part of these discussions are always twofold. We learn about the actual thinker and we think through a text, but we also get to learn about the people that I invite on here because I respect them a lot and I love the work that they're doing. So I'd love to hear what you're doing, what you're currently working on, your research, and yeah.
Currently, I'm working on a paper which I try to present next year. It's about which I told you already, about the moment that we experience when we see a painting of Violet Newman, and if we can we can draw an analogy from that experience to what Kant says is a sublime experience. That's one thing I want to work on, and yeah, for a small paper and a small conference. I'm rereading the critique of teleological judgment currently, which is absolutely funny because I started to work more in the garden now during summer and be more involved in nature than not just wandering around. But then I'm thinking about the order of nature, and somehow this led me again to nature and teleology in Kant. So I'm reading every day some chapters in that, and then I try to make things more explicit in my head. And I have one bigger project underlying all the time. I will keep it short. I want to show that in nearly every idealist philosopher, in his conception of the sublime, you find the nucleus of the whole structure of his philosophy. And this, I think, fits for Schopenhauer, Hegel, and Schelling. I'm not sure yet. But that is my bigger project I'm working on now, but it's a long-term thing.
Wow, now that is very interesting. I want to hear more about that when later. But that
in 10 years, maybe.
In 10 years? No.
Well,
So,
I'm working also, I need to work for money too. So I'm more into culture and education here in Luxembourg, where I try to structure difficult topics in such a way that people get an idea of what we're talking about when we talk about this and that. So this is also taking a lot of time, which is important for my being as, if I can say so, intellectual in society. Yeah, but I can never get rid of the green books and the black books, and it's just too beautiful.
The minor editions, they're the greatest. I think you're the one that told me about the minor editions, because before I was using the Suhrkamp. Is that Suhrkamp? Is that how you pronounce it? Mm-hmm. See, my German is, I'm working on that, but can I ask you a question about Schopenhauer? If that's going to throw you off, then is that all right? Do you think Schopenhauer? I know you love Schopenhauer too. So I get a lot of people asking me questions about Schopenhauer, and I have to be honest that I've only read the first volume of The World as Will and Representation, and I never finished the second edition. But my question is that I hear from so many Schopenhauerians that out of all the idealists, so out of Fichte, out of Reinhold, out of Schelling, out of Hegel, that Schopenhauer has the best, maybe reading, maybe he's the true post-Kantian in this tradition. Do you agree with that? Do you think Schopenhauer is close to Kant's project? And are there semi-differences? Oh, wow, that was a big question. Sorry.
That's a big question. Well, what I can say, it's nice to read Schopenhauer. It's really cool to read. He has a super good style, and it's easy to access his thoughts. He is, I think, directly responding to Kant, which he's also saying, agreeing with space and time stuff, but he has the key. He has the key to the thing in itself, and that is the volition. So somehow he is digging deeper than Kant was. Kant was, as I said, a bit more humble, but Schopenhauer is really saying this is the metaphysical ground of our life, and that's how we can understand it is the will, is volition. So Schopenhauer is often not mentioned in the idealist row, but it's just a German classic, which I think he would not be upset about because he hated Hegel, who said, you're just crazy, what are you talking about? The absolute. We can never have our reason forming the absolute. It's all something else. It's a life's principle that is at the ground of everything. Schopenhauer was sure that Hegel was just an arrogant word, So somehow I think Schopenhauer can be read and should be read maybe too in a direct line on Kant to get a bit more deeper insight on maybe where Kant was not explicit enough, but also on a possible perspective on how to understand life. And this is the beauty in Schopenhauer, really. And that is what helped me a lot. I read Schopenhauer when I was not doing well. And my former teacher always said, don't read Schopenhauer too much, it's such negative thoughts, but it's not true at all. When you read him as a whole, with the idea that there is an explanation on why there is this constant nervosity and strife and negativity in the world. And that just by knowing and keeping things away from yourself, because it's just an appearance. It's just the will who is torturing you. It has really a moment of relief when you read that. And then I read some parts of the Upanishads, the Indian Geheimlehre, secret theories. Sorry, not sure about the wording in English.
No, it's all good.
It's perfect. It helps so much to just get rid of the pressure you feel in everyday life. And I think that's where the beauty in Schopenhauer lies. And that's where he goes beyond Kant. But it was not Kant's aim to explain you the world. It was Kant's aim to explain you how you can understand the structure of the world, how our faculties work. So.
No, that was great. That was great. And I'm sorry, I should apologize. I threw you on the spot there. That was a bit much. I'm interested in your culture and society work as well too. Are you applying any of this Kantian Schopenhauerian work when you do that? And if you do, that's amazing. Can you give me an example of how you discuss certain things and that you implement Kant or Schopenhauer, or if that's too much, I'm sorry.
No. Normally I'm doing this a bit undercover. All which I gathered during my research time and my time as a student, I can use. And if it goes from Adorno to Hegel to, I don't know, Habermas, whatever, every topic I'm asked to talk about can be linked to a theory or to an idea that has been already discussed somehow. And I'm not then copy pasting. I'm just trying to explain the perspectives we gain from our philosophers and to link it to the actual world. Because we started with aesthetics, let me stay in aesthetics. I was talking about an artist in Guantanamo who is sitting there without a real trial, you know, Guantanamo stuff like.
Yeah.
And he's doing art out of jail. And then I was linking that to Schiller's theory of how the human being is able to form what he is perceiving and to give it another shape to make it transcend the sensual Zustand, the sensual state, and
Okay.
stuff like that. And people then get dipped into a bit philosophy, sorry, and they are not scared then, because first when I say I'm a philosopher, oh my god, this is something really intellectual. But then when you start to link actual topics to philosophy, they are into philosophy, they don't even notice. And then it gets interesting for them, because then they, I understood this, so maybe I can access this. Or when I was writing, I wrote about bioethics now. So the same, you get ethical theories, you can spice up your article a bit with that. When it's an article for a newspaper or for a journal that is not academic, of course, otherwise you do a completely different scheme. But when you write for the people, you have to find a way to make it vulgar, but not simplifying, just to make it accessible for them, to find the right attunements that they can understand. And this is difficult, but it's also very interesting, and it's super cool when it works. And I think, and that's always what I say before I start my conference as an aesthetic philosophy for the normal people, I say that philosophers did not write for the shelves, also not the ancient philosophers. They wrote for the understanding of life, and they wanted to share their ideas. And that's what I try too. I try not to leave the books in the shelves, but I try to make the ideas livable. And when that works, people are amazed and intrigued and interested. And that's really, really cool.
Can I ask a personal question? When it comes to art, who are your artists that you go to? Who are the painters that inspire you? Even music as well, or the plastic arts or sculptures? What is the art that inspires you both personally and also when you write as well too? I know you brought up some of them.
Yeah. Which really hits me is very difficult to explain. As I said, I can go through a museum and don't feel anything at all. But then I can fall over a small piece of art and it's just like, wow. So it's difficult to spell out what is it. But I think everything that has a certain aesthetic that is fitting my personal being at that very specific moment is really what inspires me then too. I have some artists I really love. Two of them are German. There is Lennart Grau, who is working, I don't think you know him yet.
No.
Lennart Grau and Miriam Flaming, who currently are touching my soul when I see their works. Maybe we can Google after this some pictures and show them to the listeners. And I have one here of Lennart Grau. Wait, I just go and get it. Wait.
Sure, of course.
But this is a very tiny one. Normally he's doing also big stuff. It's very it's very colorful.
Wow.
But it has something. It has a dynamic that I cannot explain. But it's just it's sharing energy. It has an aura. Yes. And this is what is interesting for me in art. In music, the same thing. It can be electronic music. When it has just the right energy, I can dig in. It can also be something from Gustav Mahler, very classical. It can also be a ballad. It's not really extreme. It is also often rock. I like the aesthetic of some Manson songs, not the aggressive ones, but some more calm ones. I like it because it has something that fits then somehow my personal rhythm. Schopenhauer would say it fits then the attunement of the volition in me. I don't know, but something like that. It's really difficult for me to spell it out. What is it? And then I hear Kant in my back. That's it. What is aesthetic? You cannot put concepts on it. What really hits you?
Yeah, I think you know my favorite painter because I like just I slab photos of his art all over Facebook. It's Hammershoy.
Is it, who is it?
It's Hammershoy, Wilhelm
Okay.
Hammershoy. And I love him. And you know what? And as mundane as his paintings look, and as simple as his interiors are, it's the lines and light that move me. He'll always paint just a room, an empty room. His interiors are beautiful. And he'll always have his wife in it, Ida, who is just like his muse, but you never see her face. You always see just the back of her neck. And so you'll see certain things. And what he does for me is he gives life to light. Like he shows you how light reflects every image. He's got these really cool kind of Scandinavian colors, the grays and some of the golds that mix in with whites, and it's beautiful. But I don't want to take too much of your time. So thank you so much for describing Kantian aesthetics, the sublime, and me just throwing questions at you and you answering so perfect and so calmly and just like letting it flow right out of you. So thank you so much.
I thank you for having me. It was a great honor when you asked me, and I was happy that we could find now a date and just make it happen. And
Yes.
I hope people like it too. And then we will see what they say.
I'm sure they'll love it. You did fantastic. Thank you so much.
I had a great time. Thank you really for your excellent questions too.
Thank you.
So have a good day.